Auburn earned much acclaim and respect for its 5-0 start. Florida, on the other hand, respect from few despite a similar 5-0 start. But it was the Gators who were the better team in the swamp, decidedly better, in downing the Auburn Tigers in a clash of top 10 SEC teams, final of 24-13. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, here to give my perspective on what I witnessed from Gainesville. Yeah, it was an interesting game. There were a lot of topsy-turvy plays in the first half, a lot of fumbles, muff punts, a fake punt by Florida that did not work, a lot of bad offense, a lot of missed throws, a lot of inaccurate throws by both quarterbacks, but specifically Bo Nix, who is showing us that he's a gamer, he's a tough kid, he's a leader, he's spirited, he's fiery, he has a lot of talent, but the consistency factor is not there for Bo Nix right now. And again, the first half was all over the place with a ton of just crazy, outstanding plays that you love in watching college football. Not necessarily the cleanest football. The ball was on the ground a lot. The Derek Brown play in particular was kind of indicative of the first half, in which he got the strip sack and rumbled for what should have been a touchdown. He was surrounded by a convoy of teammates to usher him into the end zone, and he just fell flat on his face. Just too much weight, going too fast, just with that end zone and all that green in sight, and he just couldn't help himself, and bam, he went down. And one of the best defensive players in college football turned in two of the biggest plays of the game, what should have been big plays, but neither resulted in points. And that's not his fault, but that's just how the game went. Auburn had its opportunities, and time after time, Gus Malzahn bypassed field goal opportunities and went for it. And again, the Gators win at 24-13. So my thoughts about the first half is it was rough and tumble, and with all those outstanding plays going back and forth. And again, not clean football. The ball was fumbled back and forth. There were interceptions. There was the strip sack that went almost all the way for a touchdown. There was the muffed punt by Auburn, which set up Florida in prime position inside the 5-yard line. Actually, the ball was brought back at the point of the muff, but it was still at the 17-yard line. So it was 24-13 final. We had a 14-13 game at half, and the highlights of the second half surrounded Bo Nix. So here's a quarterback who has shown us fire and spirit. He's a leader. He's a gamer. He's a baller. He'll fight you. He'll scrap. And, of course, he's got talent, and he's got mobility. He's a dynamic playmaker, and he can throw it well enough. He just can't throw it well enough consistently. He is not a consistent quarterback at this point in his career. He's a true freshman quarterback, Bo Nix. 11 of 27 for $145 and 3 interceptions is pretty much indicative of how he played. The touchdown's indicative of what we get from Bo Nix. He threaded the needle on the touchdown pass to Seth Williams between the safety and the corner. It was a beautifully thrown ball in the window at the precise time, and that looked great. But the 3 interceptions were mostly awful, especially the one that he forced on the other post pattern. So he threw the touchdown to Seth Williams from left to right to the post, and then on the other post pattern going from right to left. I don't know what he was looking at, because when you look at the end zone camera, not only was the guy who picked off the pass, it was either, we got interceptions from Marco Wilson, Sean Davis, and Donovan Steiner for Florida, but the safety was just hanging out in the end zone waiting for the ball. But even if he wasn't there, the corner had the angle cut off, and he was in perfect position to intercept it, and even a linebacker was there. There were 3 players who could have made a play on the ball, and 2 would have intercepted the pass, and 1 did, and that denied that Auburn drive. And you could see Gus Malzahn giving it one of these. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's the best body language to be giving your football team, but that's what Gus Malzahn had for us and for Bo Nix as he came back to the sideline. Bo Nix ran himself into some sacks. We saw the Bob Greasy-like, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Super Bowl history, iconic plays, Bob Greasy-like 22-yard sack on a 3rd and 5, in which Auburn was in position At that point, at 17-13, to kick the field goal to get within a field goal, one score, and possibly win the game late. But that took them out of range. They had to punt at that point. That set up the game that iced it, the play that iced it for the Florida Gators. And that, of course, was LaMichael Pirine going 88 yards. Missed tackle by the linebacker in the hole. Just bounced off Pirine. Pirine just mowed him over. And then the angle by the safety or the corner was missed. He had a shot at him. And Pirine goes 88 yards for the touchdown, and the game was over. There was 9 minutes left, but the way Auburn was playing offense and the way Florida was playing defense, give the Gators a ton of respect on defense because they held Boobie Whitlow to 81 yards rushing. Auburn trounced Mississippi State. They trounced Texas A&M on the ground, but they did not have their way against the Gators. They gained yardage. They were able to move the chains running the football to a certain extent, but they couldn't get loose. They didn't pound them repeatedly, and they didn't get any big, huge plays out of the ground game, did Auburn. Florida's defense is really good. But again, it's the inconsistency of the quarterback play at Auburn that is showing itself at this point in this type of game. Again, give the kid all the credit. He's a really good quarterback and will be an outstanding one, most likely someday if he continues to develop. But at this point, he can be a liability, and he was in this game. He's just not consistent enough to lead a drive. He's going to miss throws. He's inaccurate. He made bad reads. He made a couple awful decisions that cost them points. And therefore, the Auburn Tigers fall to 5-1. They've got a date with Arkansas next week. Florida's at 6-0 at LSU. And before we discount the Florida Gators going to LSU and winning that game, keep this game under consideration. Yes, it's going to be difficult for the Gators to go to Death Valley and pull out a win. Everybody's enamored with Joe Burrow and the LSU offense, me included. But some teams just find ways to win, and I begged that question the entire week during our many previews and looks at this game from both sides, that maybe Florida's just that team. Maybe Florida's just that type of team that they just play well enough regardless of who they're playing. Of course, they beat the FCS teams into the ground, but just had enough for Miami, just had enough for Kentucky. And then the competition level and the quality of play on the other side of the ball goes way up, and Florida matched it. Now, of course, they were at home, and the home crowd was ready for this one, and certainly that gives them a big boost. But to win this one and not to win it at the gun was a pretty gutsy effort by the Florida defense. And let's not forget, we've gone about 5 minutes without mentioning Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask, 19 of 31 on the day, 234 yards, but it was his gamesmanship. It was his toughness. I talk about Bo Nix. Kyle Trask obviously was laid out on the ground at one point, and it didn't look good in trying to read the play in which the weight of, I believe it was Marlon Davidson, just collapsed his left knee. So it didn't look good at all for him, and it looked like it was a serious injury based on the slow-mo instant replay combined with his reaction. Athletes, as it was talked about by Gary Danielson, typically show us, hey, they know. They can feel what happened. They could hear what happened. They were right there. They can feel the pain. They've been hurt before. They know if it's serious or it's not serious. Fortunately, for Kyle Trask and for football fans everywhere, not serious for Kyle Trask. He came back into the game. In the meantime, Emory Jones acquitted himself extremely well. I was so impressed that Florida stayed with its offense, let Emory Jones throw the ball 5 for 7 for just like 35 yards passing, 40 yards passing, something in that range, but he threw the ball well. He threw a couple crossing routes. He threw a couple slants, and they were on the money. They were on time. He delivered them with velocity. And, of course, he's a running threat. So Emory Jones, if Florida loses Trask, is not necessarily in bad shape. Florida ran 12 more plays. I thought that was key in the game. I thought it was going to be actually a lot more of a discrepancy than that when I looked it up. 72 plays for the Gators, 60 for the Auburn Tigers. And, again, credit Kyle Trask for coming back into the game after that scare, working out the knee, coming back after halftime, and leading this victory for Florida. And, of course, Trask threw a touchdown pass as well, 19 of 31 for 234 through the air. All right, Auburn's a really good football team, so is Florida. They're evenly matched. Florida was the better team. They made less mistakes. Their quarterback didn't make the mistakes that Bo Nix made. They were at home. They were amped up. They were fired up, and they played the better game. If these two teams played 10 times, I actually think Auburn might win 6. So Florida fans might get mad at that comment, but it's just my opinion that Auburn's still probably a better football team. Slightly, maybe, but Florida won the game. That's all that matters. They only schedule one of these between these teams in the SEC once every 6 years because of the rotation between the East and the West. So we don't get to see this matchup very often, but I was pleased to watch this game. It wasn't a thing of beauty, but it's college football, and it was beautiful just to see zany plays in this one. Again, fake punts, muffed punts, fumbles, interceptions, strip sacks a couple different times that went for big gainers by the defense. Auburn, Arkansas next week. Florida takes on LSU. That's one we're going to lock in on all week. And hopefully you join us for our week-to-week previews, because when it comes to Auburn and Florida, we delivered 3 previews on this game from 3 different perspectives right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will be checking out Ohio State, Michigan State, and a ton of other games. I know Miami just went down to Virginia Tech, so keep it locked in right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We'll have an exclusive live stream here later tonight with your phone calls featured. We will see you next time. Keep it locked in.